Dear friends, we are going to start discussion and elaboration of the content of the book written by me, Shape of Economy. What does Shape of Economy stands for has been elaborated in the introductory first paragraph of the book, that it is just nothing but the graphical presentation of four basic activities which every human being has to undertake. Two are physical activities, that is consumption and production, and the two other activities are monetary activities. They are just nothing because purpose of money is to evaluate the function of consumption and production. So just equal and opposite, because unless there is an income, consumption cannot take place, and unless there is expenditure, production cannot take place. So these are four axes of my graph that represents at the bottom side you have two physical activities. One side is consumption, other side, what I mean to say, the left hand side of the graph represents the consumption and the right hand side represents production. When you draw a vertical line from the pole of consumption, you will find there is a mention of income. Income is a monetary value, and if you draw a horizontal line from income to other pole, that is vertical of production, point of production, you will find the monetary value of expenditure. So these are four axes, and these four axes represents interaction between two physical forces and two monetary forces, and in a perfect equilibrium. When we talk about the equilibrium, means once you can have a constant equilibrium just to compare, but in actual life there cannot exist a perfect equilibrium. It's a dynamic process because each second, each moment, each minute, each hour, the forces of consumption change, the forces of production change. So therefore the opposite monetary value of income also changes accordingly, and opposite monetary value of expenditure also changes constantly. So it's always a state of dynamic equilibrium. Dynamic means it's always changing, but the dynamism has to come to a point of balance. Sooner or later, it cannot tilt in either direction endlessly, because the market forces will force a balance between consumption and production. That means the supply and demand. Any student of economics will understand that how the rate is arrived at. That is one graph that is drawn on two axes. One axis denotes supply and another axis denotes demand. So when there is a perfect match between the demand and supply, you can say it's a stage of equilibrium. That supply equals to demand and demand equals to supply. Now, there are other graphs as well, because I am not a graduate in economics, but in my schooling time I studied as a student of commerce. Elementary knowledge of economics is I possess economic basic economic knowledge of economics, and I started understanding that what is the consumer surplus. Later on, the law of marginal utility, diminishing utility, and then I was also taught about this demand and supply equilibrium, how demand equals to supply. And if there is a mismatch, if demand exceeds supply, what happens? That is the stage of inflation because more demand will chase a limited production, so rates will go high. That means the inflation will take place. But on the contrary, if the supply exceeds demand, in that case, the rates will fall and consumer will gain because if the rate falls, then the person who produces he suffers loss, but goods are available to consumer at a cheaper rate. But this cannot for very long because if suppliers face financial loss, they will stop producing it. Then again, supply will be limited. In that case, once again, demand will equal to supply. There were another chapters where the market conditions were also taught to me as a student in my schooling days. That is how the market plays its role in monopoly kind of situation, in oligarchy type of position, and how the elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply they counter each other, and all these concepts were taught to me as a graph. Therefore, in this shape of economy, also I have taken the help of a graph to show how the interaction and equilibrium of now it's a very complicated kind of a graph if you compare it with a demand and supply and other graphs because they use two axes, and in this shape of economy graph I have four axes. So the variables just multiply by establishing number. And if you further analyze bifurcate the composition of the graph, you will find there are so many variables that can be evaluated, analyzed at the same time. What is the purpose of presenting a graph? Because it can also be derived by mathematical formulas. In case of shape of economy graph also, very complicated mathematical conclusions can be drawn which otherwise are not possible for any economist to compare and calculate simultaneously. Another purpose, because when I was writing this book, I was desperately trying to search one thing, that what should be the ideal shape. Okay, you can give a shape to anything. You can give a shape to economy as well by the means of graph. But what that graph should look like? Here comes the question of finding a ideal shape for the economy. So we know just watching a shape that isn't it we are moving towards some ideal state of economy, or we are distorting it. Distortion means that whatever we are trying to achieve by economic growth, is it going to yield results in the future, or we are just chasing those targets which are misleading us to believe that we are growing economically, but somewhere or other, this myth of growth is misleading us. So one should always remember it's a scientific fact that there is a cosmic reality all around us that shows that every celestial moving body of the universe has a shape. Shape means it contains mass, and that mass is by internal gravitational forces. It gives it a shape of a sphere. You can watch every morning that when sun arises, you can view the shape of sun that is spherical. On full moon, you will watch that the moon is also spherical. When you go the higher heights of, you can see Earth as well spherical. All the planets of the solar system are spherical. They are not either, you can call it octagonal or any other shape is not conceivable. There can be hundreds of conceivable shapes in geometry, but you will find only one shape that's a spherical. If you move out from now, there are telescopes all around. They search the outer space, and all the stars, all they also have a similar system like our solar system, and every object of the cosmos is spherical. Why? Because it's changing constantly. The equilibrium between different forces of different solar systems and within solar systems. This equilibrium is changing constantly, and the our mass of Earth, mass of Moon, mass of Venus, mass of Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they are constantly changing, and this change is regulated. No one collides with each other. They orbit in predetermined orbits. There is a kind of a discipline. There is a kind of a rhythm in the movement. And this particular reality has been captured by my book, Cosmic Concept and Economic Development. There also the objective of cosmos, to choose a cosmos for to compare it with the economic development, has the same logic that what should be the ideal we should be chasing in our life. That's a point that's of paramount interest to me, at least. I don't know much about other economists. They realize this problem or not, but I feel that any study of any subject, unless it chases some target, some positive results can emanate only then, and that study of subject becomes meaningful. If we just study the subject of economics, that what is per capita income, what is national product, gross national product, what is balance of trade, what is monetary system, what is taxation and this thing. These are all subgroups of something of economics, but the main objective, because everybody doesn't study economics, only few scholars choose economics as a subject of their choice. But the remaining public, they don't know much about what economists are talking about, what they're discussing about. Each day the reports are reported that the World Bank has predicted this much growth rate for the world economy. This rate has been, there are different rating agencies like Moody's and so on and so forth, S&P, and there are so many agencies engaged in this exercise of calculating what will be the future growth of economy, which economy will grow faster and which will be lagging behind. What is the first world war, world economies? What are third world economies? So all these data are okay. So they reflect one part of the total study of economics. But in totality, if you want the subject to be meaningful and to be illustrative to a common man, these days everybody knows that what is a per capita income, how much he is getting, he is more interested in that. So he knows these are how much my income is going to be in the near future, but he doesn't know how much will be the inflation in the future. Will there be adequate supply? Will there be, and producers don't know, will there be adequate demand for the production they are planning for? Because they don't have that kind of a vision that in which state the economy is, and they don't know how far it is from the point of gravity, because sphere is a why sphere is a choice, because the sphere has a center of gravity, and from that center of gravity distances from any angle you take, that is equal. If you take a 360-degree analysis of a sphere, you will find that the distances from the center point, that is a point of center of gravity, the distances are equal in each direction. But is this the case with the world economy or the economy of any nation? We don't, because we don't compare all the four factors basic economic activity, the four factors of basic economic activity in at once. At once, I mean to say that demand, production, consumption, income, and expenditure as a totality, and then derive at a shape. And this shape will, you will find that it will automatically assume a shape of sphere. And that is what the ideal you are looking by looking at a moon or at a rising sun or a solar system or the total cosmos as such. So once you find the ideal shape for the economy, then all the problems of mathematical calculation that only remains to be solved. There's nothing more you can do but compare the variables and constants. What are the constants and what are the variables? This we will elaborate in the lectures to follow. But then, in this my first introductory lecture, I just want to introduce to a graph why it is a graph and what its basic contents are, and what is this graph is trying to achieve. I am not an economist. I have not, as I told you before, that I have only studied in my school days. But I am a student of commerce, I am a chartered accountant, and I know that what problems lie ahead, all of us, that we are chasing a target and there is a mirage. We achieve something at the cost of something which is not calculated at all. We have played havoc with the environment, natural resources. And what is the cost of restoration of the environment? It's a mind-boggling. Mind-boggling cost will be paid by our generations to come. We will die. This generation who has polluted rivers, who has contaminated the atmosphere, greenhouse effect, global warming, all these problems we have created, but who will suffer for it? Who will pay for it? shape of economy considers four constants, and number of variables can also be analyzed and elaborated simultaneously. But there are unknown variables. The cost and financial repercussions of these variables, we know about it, but we are trying to play hide and seek goal with those consequences. We are trying to play hide and seek game with these known future liabilities. These liabilities are in shape of disaster which we have caused to our environment, and the result of those our industrial activities are known today as global warming. We know the temperature levels have risen quite dramatically in the past few decades, and the glaciers are melting, and sea level is rising. Number of cities and number of places which are basically located close to the sea floor will be inundated, will be submerged, and that will cause unknown. We don't know what kind of calamities, because the whole city, the existence of whole city will come under doubt. The cost of rehabilitation of residents of those societies will be enormous. So this is only one aspect, but to clean the air and restore the oxygen level which was there before, because we know in number of cities the citizens of those cities are basically inhaling carbon dioxide, and its number of other pollutants. In that case, the health of those cities which are heavily polluted, the cost of restoration of oxygen level, which is healthy for human being, will be necessary. Otherwise, the whole city will become, residents will have to run away from those cities, because the damage this level of pollution can cause to human lungs, respiratory system. The damage is not what the doctors say, what the reports I get from health sector doctors, that the damage once caused to the lungs that cannot be medically treated. So we are playing this hide and seek role of restoring the level of oxygen once again. What will be the cost of restoration? Another aspect is we have polluted our rivers. Now, if we want to clean up the aqua life and the damage that is causing these polluted water river is causing to residents living there on the banks of river, let's say we don't know, because those innocent people don't know what is mixed in the water of river. Sometimes some investigation agency goes there and checks the pollution level. Only then those residents know. Otherwise, they keep on drinking the same water, polluted water, because they don't have any other alternative source of fresh water there. So all these consequences, all these variables of restoring the ecology of our earth is going to be enormous. The cost of restoration will be enormous, and most of the government are not letting it know that what is their plan to restore the distortion or the pollution that has already been taken up. We have yet to set the emission level, and emission level by what time, by the year 2030 or 2040 or 2050. we will achieve that level of carbon dioxide emission level? Will it reduce or and till then what will happen? We can't stop living, breathing we can't wait that by 2030 emission level will come down, only then I will breathe. My breathing is every second, every minute I have to inhale the oxygen, and if it is not oxygen, it's a carbon dioxide and it's causing my damage to my lungs. Then do I have any other solution for that? Any alternative? So these are certain variables we know about it. What is the status of damage to the environment we have already caused. But since the cost is going to be mind-boggling, therefore most of the governments are keeping silent because otherwise there will be political unrest and they want to avoid it. But the shape of economy will bring it to the forefront. Once the deterioration will take place, we will have to investigate what are the causes of distortion of center of gravity of shape of economy and why it is drifting. In that case, the investigation will reveal it that it is due to this factor, why the demand is coming down and why unnecessary expenditure on maintenance of health of residents is going up. So somebody will have to explain why this is happening. In that case, you will have to report it to the people, the citizen of that country, citizen of the world, that this is because of this factor. So, what I insist that what shape of economy can be used to educate, not only educate, but to make people aware of the future liability. Because as I told you before also, that we are chasing a target which the government has promised us. They are just like dream merchants and they have sold dreams of prosperity and well-being, happiness to all of us, and we are knowingly, unknowingly, we are believing it and engaging ourselves in the economic activity. We are participant in the economic activity. Every individual is participant, but in that case, what my future generation or during my own generation, is this dream is realizable or not realizable? What are future liabilities the mankind is to undertake in shape of these natural calamities and disasters? All around the world, you will find that now, due to climate change, the pattern of rainfall is changing. In our neighborly country, Pakistan, huge flood inundated their total agricultural land, their small towns and cities as well. Now that country is almost stage of insolvency because of the loss of crop. They can't feed their people, their citizen, because the whole crop was damaged. Now, who is at fault? The citizens of Pakistan or the whole lot of those countries which have caused the global warming, but nobody will share their financial burden because it is never calculated. It cannot be now calculated that who caused the damage, how much damage, what is the cost of damage, and now what is the cost of restoration of it. So all these points which I am discussing right now in this lecture is a very simple fact that our own life and in our future generations' life, we have to give them a safe, secure future and let them know and make them future ready for confronting those challenges which are going to emerge in the near future. So this is only, of course, this is on the sideline of the benefits of shape of economy, but the fact remains that there is no other model, econometric model, or any thought process going on in the circle of eminent economists, that how to calculate and how to warn and how to make people future ready to face these kind of contingencies of growth of economy. Everybody is forecasting rate of growth, future rate of growth, but what kind of challenges those economies will face while chasing that target is not considered, I can say, right now. Maybe in the future we will realize our mistake and try to accommodate these costs, and we will be compelled to once again relook at the cost benefit analysis, that what cost we should pay and what more cost we should add to it to make us future ready. So, with this discussion, I terminate my lecture for today. In next lecture, in next class of this topic of shape of economy, we will take another few paragraphs of the book, because right now I have concentrated only the introductory part of the first chapter of my book. Now we will progress further. Thanks.